No matter how isolated you are and how lonely you feel, if you do your work truly and diligently, unknown allies will come and seek you. Carl Jung. If you are serious about getting ahead of 99% of people in the next 12 months, then you need to forget about hacks, luck, or grinding 16 hours a day. The system that I'm about to reveal to you is literally designed to trigger your biology to want to keep going. We will use our brain, our built-in reward system, to work for us so that we accomplish great things for ourselves and for others. Because to get ahead, you don't need talent. The most important thing is that you know how to keep going, how to keep on moving. And to keep going, you cannot rely only on willpower because willpower will deplete. And you need something else in order to become successful. So, to get ahead, you need drive, which is a powerful source of energy that comes from within you, right? So, the moment you develop drive, you transform your life. And in this video, I want to show you how you develop a drive. And it is actually quite simple. We will do this in 5 steps, and we will stack different forms of motivations on top of each other. It will all make sense in a moment. So let's get started with step number 1. It starts super simple, and yet it is the foundation for you to achieve great things. And that is curiosity. There's a reason why kids learn faster. I mean, sure, their brains are wired to learn, but there's also another reason, and that is what humans and mammals do in order to learn survival, and that is play. If you observe a kid in the playground, you see they are so good at playing, at following their curiosity, right? They examine their surrounding, they interact with it, experiment with it. And you sometimes see them even engage in some sort of role play where they test social norms. And we can do the same thing even as adults. If we are playing, everything feels effortless, and our brain supports us even in this by giving us dopamine whenever we start playing, whenever we follow our curiosity. The reason why it is so effortless when we start playing is because our body releases norepinephrine. I don't know how to pronounce this word, but it's here. Norepinephrine. And dopamine, which is a much easier word to say. And this will make everything just feel more pleasurable and effortless when we're doing something. So it's like a neurochemical reward for us that makes anything just more enjoyable. So we can overcome the feeling of inertia. It's just the brain saying, hey, this is good, let's get started. So it equips us with energy to get the right push in a direction. Hi, this is Patrick from the future. And I completely forgot to mention that I actually take a lot of information from the book The Art of the Impossible by Steven Kotler. It's a really amazing book. I haven't even fully read it completely. I'm still reading it, but I wanted to share the stuff that I learned from there. I mingle in my own opinions and other insights that I have into it, but I feel that I need to mention that much of the stuff is from this book. So check it out, The Art of the Impossible by Steven Kotler. It's super cool. And if you enjoy these kind of videos, if you feel there's some value in it, I would also appreciate if you leave a like or share it with friends, or even follow if you haven't done so already. Let's go back to Patrick from the past. Okay, I hear you say, well, Patrick, I'm a curious person, so what do I do with this, right? I still don't feel always motivated to achieve great things. I hear you, but bear with me because we're just getting started. And whether you are a curious person by nature or not, I would recommend you to do the following exercise. Take a piece of paper and make a list of at least 10 things that you are curious about. Be specific and avoid general categories, but list anything that could be interesting for you. So don't write down something like, I'm interested in psychology or philosophy, but write a statement like this. how pricing psychology influences buyers' decision, or the daily habits of 18th century philosophers, or how does Wim Hof's breathwork method work, or how does stress impact creative thinking and problem solving? So you want to create a list of stuff like that where you just feel an interest, where you have some questions about this that you would like to get answers for. And what usually happens when you do that is that, well, first you want to answer that question, obviously, but you will also keep these questions in the back of your head. It will flow through your mind while you just go about your day. And unconsciously, subconsciously, you will look for clues in your environment to answer these questions. So this will just happen like that, because your brain will just want to collect more and more data to follow this curiosity. This will open your mind for the unknown. And once you start asking questions, you will find even more questions behind the answers, which will create an incredible loop of discovery, learning, and satisfaction. And this is just the beginning. By following curiosity, we release dopamine and other neurochemicals that I cannot pronounce. So we get a spark of interest, a spark of motivation, right? So we have all been there before. Curiosity is just so universal. You cannot not be curious about things, right? But by listing these things, we get a bit more intentional about the things that we are curious about and narrowing our focus on a specific set of curiosities, right? And that's just the beginning. Now we want to stack more curiosity on top of each other, so we release even more energy, right? So let's move on to step number 2. Because with our curiosities, we found an initial spark to make the first step, right, towards something bigger. But then what? This will not get us ahead of 99% of people because we are all curious. These little bits of energy that we get by listing our curiosities, this is not enough to keep us going and pushing through hard times, right? We just need more energy. And that's why we will stack curiosities on top of each other in order to stack our motivation. But we don't do this by chance. We want to see the overlap between different areas of curiosity, of interest. So let's look at 2 items that I wrote down before. And that is, how does Wim Hof's breathwork method work? And the second I want to look at is, how does stress impact creative thinking and problem solving? So maybe I have these 2 items in my list of curiosities, and now I'm looking at them and I can already see, okay, there is something more between those, right? Like I can learn Wim Hof's breath work, and I might be interested in how this could impact my creative thinking. And maybe my breath work will help me to reduce the amount of stress that I feel so I can be more creative, right? So during my research, I might learn that Wim Hof's breathing directly calms the autonomic nervous system. So that means we lower stress in our body. And when I look into creativity, I learned that high levels of cortisol shrinks the part of the brain that involves creative problem solving, right? So if I learn about breath work, for example, I learn how to reduce the stress, and I can even become creative through this, right? So as you see, you have done that probably in the past, making connections between different things, right? And why do you do that? It seems almost natural to do this because every time we see a connection between different things, if we spot a pattern, we get rewarded with dopamine again. I think it's interesting to talk about the roles dopamine has in our body, just so you understand why dopamine is actually so powerful in what we're doing, because everything that we do in every step here is to increase the amount of dopamine we can get naturally, right? To keep ourselves focused and motivated. Okay, so we spot patterns and that releases dopamine. And because of dopamine's role, this is what happens after that. We are able to ignore all the distractions, the noise around us, and focus fully on the signal at hand, which means that we will spot more patterns, right? We will ignore music around us, ignore other things that might distract us that have nothing to do with what we look at. So you will get more laser focused and spot even more patterns, which will then in return reward you even more with dopamine. And because dopamine is a reward chemical, we will remember this, that we just get dopamine whenever we spot a pattern. So we want to spot more patterns, right? Next time we're sitting in front of some ideas and we make connections, we will get rewarded again. So we will get more and more motivated every day to link ideas. And every time our body releases a lot of these neurochemicals like dopamine, our body thinks, hey, this experience is important. Let's label it as very important. And that makes it more likely that we store this event not just in our short-term memory, but into our long-term memory, right? So we memorize and remember more information this way, which is good for our learning and for our understanding. So you can see how we can almost hack our brain into becoming more motivated. We just need to play with our curiosities, follow them, and see connections between them. And we just get more focused and creative and even remember more of what we discover, right? And this is how you develop a healthy obsession. You just want to spend time learning about it, building something, and it is very powerful. And this obsession is a super potent driver, and it's probably enough to keep you going for a while. It's helpful to start building a business, to develop a product, and see the first fruits of success. But even then, you will hit a wall. At some point, you will think, okay, well, I don't feel like doing this today, so you won't. If you don't have something else beyond your obsession, because an obsession can still be something very self-centered, something that evolves around what you want, what you think is important, which is a perfect start. This is how we should get started. This is how intrinsic motivation works. But at some point, you got yourself covered. You have enough money, or you just see enough progress in what you're doing, and it's all fine and dandy. And if you reach that point where you just feel, okay, now I got the foundations down, I'm having my own business, I make enough money, you will start looking at something else that could keep you motivated. So just building something for yourself is not enough to keep you going over a long time. So this is where your brain would normally shift to solving bigger problems, something that is not just about you, but beyond yourself, maybe something to change the world or to change your neighborhood, change your community for the better. So what do we need? And I'm almost embarrassed to say that, but we need purpose. And I know purpose is a very vague word and it's hard to grasp. So I want to quickly break it down so it makes sense for us and our purposes. And I think it's nice to talk about what happens in our brain when we have a sense of purpose, right? Because purpose literally alters the brain volume and networks. And also when we have a sense of purpose, we shift our attention from within us, from about me, to about others. So we look at the rest of the world. So we are less likely to ruminate, to be anxious about ourselves, and we focus more on the task at hand because there's something that needs to be done in order to fulfill our purpose. And we all feel lost all the time, right? It's normal. But if we don't have a purpose that shields us from our intrusive thoughts, we might get depressed or burned out. Nothing protects us anymore. If we don't know, hey, what am I doing this for? Just for me? Well, it's not enough to keep me going. And if that is not enough, people who move with conviction command respect, attention, and sympathy. So when you act on what is true to you and you try to change the world for the better, you will find allies for your cause. This social support in turn will release more dopamine and oxytocin and will therefore improve your intrinsic motivation. Okay, how do you find your purpose? I gotta admit, this is hard to cover in one video like this. So I will leave you with one thing to think about, and that is there something where you just feel compelled to make a change? Is there something like a revolution that you would like to lead? Is there a specific group of people or a specific group of living beings or an area in the world that you care about? And how would this tie into your knowledge, into your interests, into your craft? Is there something you can do in order to change something like this? Could you invest your next 5 to 10 years for that cause using your skills? I gotta admit, purpose is something that is really hard to wrap your head around. I would try to find something that is larger than yourself. How can I apply my skills and my interests in order to make some kind of change that is meaningful to me? And it doesn't have to be about changing the world. It can just be around your flat, your family, your neighborhood, or an internet community. So let's move on to step number 4. So now you already know that you need to follow your curiosities and that you need to look for connections between them. And these intersections, if you see the connections between them, you come up with even more discoveries, and you develop something like an obsession that will propel you forward, right? And then you apply your obsession to something bigger than yourself, to a bigger problem that you can help solve. And this becomes your purpose. And how do you actually follow that purpose? There's something really important, and you need to make sure that you have it, and otherwise everything is for naught. What you need is autonomy, because autonomy is the freedom to pursue your purpose, to follow your interests. It's the freedom to decide how you spend your time, what problems you work on, and how you solve them. And it does more than just feel good. It actually rewires your brain. So when you have autonomy, you're more focused, optimistic, resilient, creative, and physically even healthier. When we can act on our own terms, we release more dopamine, we have less cortisol in our system, and we have a higher baseline of energy. And you don't need total autonomy from day one. It's not that you need to be able to do anything that you want every day. Research shows even spending 15 to 20% of your time on projects that truly matter to you dramatically changes how you feel and perform. There's a great example from a company called Google, and they allow their employees to work 20% on their own projects. So imagine every Friday they have a full day to just pursue whatever they want without any agenda from someone else. And because of that, we now have products like Gmail, Google Maps, and AdSense, because that's what some of these employees developed. When you have the freedom to follow your passion and purpose, you reach your potential. But unfortunately, not every company acts like Google and gives their employees such autonomy. So that's why many people feel stuck in the office. And that's why I think it's a very miserable way of life for most people. Because if your boss picks your goals, your hours, your priorities, how could you ever build your own purpose out of that? It's nearly impossible to align your work with your values, with your principles, to fully express your weirdness and individuality when someone else holds you on a leash, And I'm not saying you cannot find meaningful work inside a company. It's just much harder. And if you are still working in a job, make sure you can carve out 20% of your time every week, even on the weekend, to pursue your interest, to build something that is valuable to you, because that is the only way you can get ahead of people. You will need to build upon your own interests, see the patterns, carve out time to be in charge, to pursue this, because without autonomy, your purpose and your achievements will always be capped. And ideally, you would leave your job because you pursue your own business that was born out of your interest, right? That is, I think, the most ideal way to continue. It's a more natural path, I feel, from being an employee towards entrepreneurship. This is, for me, the easiest way to actually move with purpose. And being an employee is maybe helpful and even necessary for some, but it is just a stepping stone. Okay, now it's time for the last step, number 5. All right, if you do step 1 till 4, you're already on your path. You're doing what you love by choice. You have enough time to do so, and you have a purpose, something to work towards, right? You're obsessing about something, and you even make a positive change out there, right? So that's perfect. You're right where you need to be. But what if your skills are actually not enough to fulfill your purpose, to do the thing that you see in your visions? What if you want to achieve something greater than you are able to do today? We need the last driver of motivation, and that is mastery. Mastery is the drive to keep getting better at what you're doing. And this is not just a high-minded ideal. It is something that is really very natural for us humans. We're wired to crave mastery, to get better. Because every time we progress, every time we learn something and we move forward and get better at something, the brain gives us, you guessed it, dopamine. Every time we progress, we get some dopamine, and we want to, of course, do more of that. So we want to keep improving because progress feels good. The dopamine is your reward for moving forward and exploring, so you can keep improving. And during this quest to mastery, you will more often than not enter one of the most productive and rewarding states of the mind, flow. Because to get better at things, you will always have to stretch outside of your comfort zone a little bit. Because if you want to get better at something, you always need to leave your comfort zone a little bit, right? And stretch your abilities a bit. You always have to do a little bit more of something you can't actually do yet. But it has to be close to your abilities, because otherwise you will be overwhelmed. So it is important to always find something that seems very hard to do, but you can get there somehow, right? So the flow state is the tightrope of anxiety and overwhelm and boredom. So you want to be right in the middle. And by pursuing mastery, you will find yourself in that state more and more, and you receive even more dopamine, and you will deepen your focus and lose the track of time. Okay, we have these big words like purpose and mastery, but what does it actually now mean? How can we make this more tactical? To be honest, it is your path. I can only give you high-level pointers, and one of them would be to devote yourself to a craft. I think this ties everything very perfectly together. If you have a craft, let's say you're already freelancing, you're already an employee somewhere, you probably use some sort of craft in order to make money. Design, copywriting, software development, building, engineering, drawing, arts, music, whatever it is. And you already made a long list of curiosities in the exercise in the beginning. So you can also use your craft as a lens for all these other curiosities. So whenever you feel like you're curious about something, you can ask yourself, hey, how does this tie to my craft? If I'm interested in breathwork, could this influence the way I design things or how I write? Or could this just become a piece of content for my platforms? Even if you're a designer by trade, as long as you create content out there, you have the chance to always tie any curiosity back to your craft or to your personality. So that's a great way to explore all these other curiosities. You're constantly exploring new angles. You look for overlaps between your interests and your craft, and you will push your abilities into fresh territory. This will keep you engaged, discovering and growing. So over time, mastery will let you aim your skills at problems bigger than yourself, right? So which will strengthen your sense of purpose and your ability to fulfill that purpose. And all boils down to your natural curiosity and the obsession you develop out of it. And if you really do that, if you stack these motivators, these 5 motivators from these 5 steps on top of each other, and if you keep striving for improvement, then nothing can stop you. Everything will feel like play while you're doing something that is meaningful to you and for others, while you're improving your craft. This is the best and fastest and most reliable way to get ahead of 99% of people. So get out there and start following your interests.